pre-dawn hours on October 14, 2016 brought an unusual stillness to Monterey Bay, California. The marine layer had lifted earlier than usual, revealing a sky painted in deep purples and oranges as sunrise crept over the Santa Cruz Mountains. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its surface broken only by gentle, long-period swells. And this was a perfect day for Jake Morrison. At 26 years old, Jake embodied the California surfer archetype: sun-bleached hair, perpetually tanned skin, and an easy smile that masked a deep intelligence and profound respect for the ocean. As a surf instructor at Monterey Bay Surf Academy, Jake had built a reputation for his patience with beginners and ability to keep students safe in challenging conditions. His colleagues often said Jake could read the ocean like a book, predicting wave sets and identifying potential hazards with uncanny accuracy. The underwater Monterey Canyon, plunging to depths of over 12,000 feet just offshore, created upwelling currents that brought nutrient-rich water to the surface. However, this rich ecosystem also supported a significant population of great white sharks. October represents the peak season for great white activity in Monterey Bay, coinciding with elephant seal pupping season. Great white sharks are the ocean's apex predators, capable of growing over 20 feet long and weighing more than 5,000 pounds. They possess approximately 300 serrated teeth arranged in multiple rows, with a bite force that can exceed 4,000 pounds per square inch. Their hunting strategy involves ambush attacks from below, using their powerful tail to propel their massive bodies upward at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. On this particular morning, Jake had checked the surf forecast and discovered perfect conditions, clean waves in the head-high range. His wetsuit was a high-end, 4/3 millimeter full suit in solid black, designed for Northern California's cold water. From below, this sleek black silhouette would closely resemble a young elephant seal, the preferred prey of great whites in this area. For 30 minutes, Jake caught wave after perfect wave. The conditions exceeded the forecast, with clean faces and long rides that reminded him why he had fallen in love with surfing. What Jake didn't know was that he was being observed. Approximately 50 feet below, a 14-foot great white shark had been patrolling the area since before dawn. This was a mature female, estimated to weigh close to 2,000 pounds, attracted to the area by scent trails from a nearby seal colony. Jake, who was taking a rest in shallow water, was sitting on his board when suddenly the shark launched itself with explosive force, its jaws clamping down on Jake's left leg and hip with a bite force exceeding 4,000 pounds per square inch. The bite caused immediate and massive trauma. The shark's teeth penetrated deep into Jake's leg and hip, severing the femoral artery, crushing the femur bone, and causing devastating tissue damage. The shark released Jake after approximately 10 to 15 seconds and disappeared back into the depths. However, the damage was already fatal. Jake's scream of agony echoed across the empty ocean. But despite the severity of his injuries, adrenaline and his years of ocean experience gave him a brief window of opportunity. Jake began paddling toward shore with desperate determination, using only his arms, as his injured leg made kicking impossible. The femoral artery injury meant he was losing blood at a rate of nearly 1 liter per minute, and that massive blood loss quickly began affecting Jake's system. Jake reached the shore, but the combination of blood loss and physical effort overwhelmed his system. Jake lost consciousness on the shore. A jogger on the beach, seeing Jake laying unconscious and bleeding heavily, ran to him and called 911. Emergency responders arrived at the area approximately 30 minutes after the attack. But even with great effort, Jake Morrison was pronounced dead at the scene at 6:47 a.m. The official cause of death was exsanguination due to femoral artery laceration and massive tissue trauma from a shark bite. The summer of 2018 brought perfect conditions to Charleston, South Carolina. The morning sky was clear, with gentle offshore breezes creating manageable waves that lapped peacefully against the shore. The temperature was comfortable, with humidity levels that made the early morning air feel refreshing rather than oppressive. It was exactly the kind of morning that had drawn coastal residents to these waters for generations. Ralph Kinney carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had spent his career making life-or-death decisions under pressure. At 47, the former fire marshal was a lifelong coastal resident with weathered hands and sun-damaged skin that told the story of decades spent by the sea. His community respected him as someone who was old school in the best sense, reliable, principled, and unshakable in his convictions. Ralph was known for his resistance to changing habits and his belief that he understood the local waters better than outside experts. When marine biologists started issuing warnings about increased shark activity, Ralph listened politely but continued his routines exactly as he always had. He had seen enough genuine emergencies to develop a healthy skepticism of what he considered unnecessary precautions. His morning swim was more than exercise. Every dawn, Ralph would follow the same routine, entering the water and swimming parallel to the shore in areas he knew intimately. What Ralph didn't fully appreciate was how dramatically the marine ecosystem had shifted in recent months. Commercial shrimp trawling operations had increased their activity in the area, and the practice of discarding chum and fish offal had created an underwater buffet that attracted predators from considerable distances. Additionally, a stormwater outflow pipe near his regular swimming route had been carrying increased amounts of organic matter into the ocean. Bull sharks represent one of evolution's most successful experiments in aquatic predation. Unlike their more famous great white cousins, these stocky, aggressive hunters possess a unique ability. They can survive in both salt and fresh water. Their specialized kidneys allow them to regulate salt levels in their blood, enabling them to swim into brackish estuaries where people least expected to encounter sharks. This adaptability, combined with their naturally aggressive temperament, makes them particularly dangerous to humans. On that morning, Ralph followed his usual routine with characteristic precision. He entered the water as the first rays of sunlight painted the horizon. The tide was high, which meant the tidal channel he normally avoided was now merged with the shallower areas where he felt comfortable swimming. Bull sharks are built for power rather than speed. Their broad, muscular bodies capable of generating tremendous force in short bursts. Their heads are distinctively blunt and wide, housing jaws that can exert over 1,300 pounds of pressure per square inch. Their teeth are broad and triangular with serrated edges, designed for gripping and tearing prey that might struggle violently. As Ralph began his steady breaststroke, moving parallel to the shore in waist-deep water, the water was slightly murky from recent rains, but that wasn't unusual for this time of year. What he couldn't see was the juvenile bull shark that had been patrolling the channel since before dawn, drawn by the scent trail from the outflow pipe and the lingering traces of the previous day's shrimp boat activity. Bull sharks are ambush predators, known to lie motionless in murky water while using their exceptional electroreception to detect the bioelectric fields generated by potential prey. The rhythmic contractions of swimming muscles created exactly the kind of signature that triggered their predatory instincts. 20 minutes into his swim, Ralph was maintaining his usual steady pace when the bull shark struck from below. The attack was swift and brutal, the shark's jaws clamping down onto his left thigh with bone-crushing force, immediately severing the femoral artery. Ralph's startled cry was cut short as the predator's weight pulled him beneath the surface. Ralph's rhythmic swimming motion had created vibrations in the water that mimicked the movement of injured fish, exactly the kind of prey that bull sharks are programmed to pursue. The murky water had provided perfect cover for the predator's approach. Ralph fought with determination, striking at the shark's head and trying to break free from its grip. But the damage was catastrophic. The bull shark's teeth had torn through major blood vessels, and he could feel his strength ebbing with each heartbeat. The water around him turned dark with blood as he struggled to reach the surface. A passerby on the beach noticed the violent splashing and called for help, but by the time emergency responders could safely reach Ralph, he had lost consciousness from blood loss. He was pulled from the water still breathing, but died within minutes despite immediate medical attention. The investigation revealed that Ralph had been swimming directly through an area that marine biologists had identified as a high-risk zone for bull shark encounters. The combination of tidal conditions, organic runoff, and recent commercial fishing activity had created perfect hunting conditions for the aggressive predators. The warnings that Ralph had dismissed were based on solid scientific evidence of increased shark activity in this regular swimming area. It was September 22, 2014, and Reunion Island remained gripped by fear following devastating shark attacks that had transformed this Indian Ocean paradise into a danger zone. Heavy overnight rains had turned coastal waters murky brown, creating perfect hunting conditions for the island's apex predators. Antoine Moreau, a 34-year-old construction worker and experienced spearfisherman, refused to let recent attacks stop him from providing for his wife Marie and 2 young children. Despite government warnings and beach closures, his 15 years of diving experience made him confident he could safely navigate waters that had claimed less skilled swimmers. He chose the St. Denis River mouth, where fresh water mixed with salt created nutrient-rich conditions, attracting bait fish and their predators. This notorious bull shark feeding ground becomes especially dangerous during rainy season when mountain runoff carried organic matter into the sea. Bull sharks rank among the world's most dangerous predators, thriving in both salt and fresh water. These aggressive, territorial hunters cause more human attacks than any species except great whites. Large females reach 10 feet and 500 pounds, delivering bite forces exceeding 1,300 pounds per square inch. Unlike great whites that strike and retreat, bull sharks attack persistently and repeatedly. Antoine entered the murky water alone, visibility limited to mere feet. 20 minutes into his dive, he spotted a large grouper beneath coral outcropping and took careful aim with his spear gun, completely focused on his target. The 10-foot female bull shark had been tracking him since he entered, using her lateral line system to detect electrical impulses from his heartbeat and muscle contractions. She followed at a distance through murky water, assessing this intruder in her territory. As Antoine fired at the grouper, the bull shark exploded upward from directly below. Her massive jaws opened wide, targeting his legs in a devastating first strike that caught his left thigh, teeth slicing through wetsuit into muscle and bone. The crushing bite severed his femoral artery, sending blood jets into murky water as she shook violently, tearing away large sections of flesh before releasing him. Antoine kicked frantically toward the surface with his remaining good leg, blood pouring from the massive wound. The bull shark circled and struck again, this time targeting his torso. Her jaws closed around his midsection with devastating force, driving him deeper as teeth punctured his abdomen and crushed ribs. The second attack proved fatal, teeth penetrating his chest cavity and puncturing lungs and heart. She held her grip for 30 seconds, before releasing his lifeless body into the depths. Antoine's remains washed ashore 3 days later, discovered by morning joggers. The extensive injury shocked investigators. His left leg nearly severed and massive bite marks covering his arms and torso indicated a prolonged, vicious attack typical of bull shark behavior. Authorities launched intensive hunts, capturing a 10-foot female whose stomach contained human remains and wetsuit pieces matching Antoine's gear. His death prompted renewed beach closure demands and highlighted the difficult balance between traditional island life and growing shark threats. The community supported Marie and their children, but Antoine's overconfidence in familiar waters during dangerous conditions had cost everything. The morning of March 19, 2014 brought perfect Caribbean weather to Nassau, Bahamas. The sun rose over the harbor, painting the sky in brilliant coral and gold as gentle trade winds carried the sweet scent of frangipane blossoms across crystal clear waters. Water temperature held steady at 78 degrees Fahrenheit, warm enough for extended swimming without protective gear. Jennifer Adams had been dreaming of this moment for over a year, ever since she and 3 college roommates decided to celebrate their 5-year reunion with a Bahamas trip. At 28 years old, Jennifer embodied the enthusiasm and optimism that made her an effective elementary school teacher in Columbus, Ohio. Teaching 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary School had been Jennifer's dream job since graduating from Ohio State University 6 years earlier. But Jennifer's dedication came at a personal cost. She rarely took time off during the school year, often working weekends to prepare lessons and grade papers. Growing up in the Midwest, Jennifer had limited ocean swimming experience. Her childhood summers were spent at Lake Erie and inland lakes, where the biggest concern was avoiding zebra mussel shells. The concept of marine predators was largely theoretical. The group had arrived in Nassau 3 days earlier, staying at a mid-range resort offering direct beach access and water sport activities. Although what Jennifer and her friends didn't realize was that their chosen swimming area had been significantly impacted by human activities that altered local marine life behavior. For over a decade, local fishermen had used a small dock about 200 yards from the resort's beach as a fish cleaning station, processing daily catches before taking them to market. Caribbean reef sharks typically grow 6 to 8 feet in length and are generally considered one of the less aggressive species. They normally avoid human contact and feed primarily on small fish, squid, and crustaceans. However, when they become conditioned to expect food in specific areas, their behavior can change, making them more likely to investigate swimmers who enter their territory. That morning began normally. Jennifer and her friends decided to spend the morning at the beach before their afternoon rum distillery excursion. She wore a bright yellow bikini purchased specifically for this trip, thinking the vibrant color would look great in vacation photos. What she didn't know was that bright colors, particularly yellow, can attract shark attention, as they may mistake them for the coloration of distressed fish or other prey species. For the first 15 minutes, Jennifer's swim was everything she had hoped. The water was so clear she could see tropical fish swimming below, their bright colors creating a living kaleidoscope that took her breath away. But what Jennifer couldn't see was the 5-foot Caribbean reef shark that had been attracted to the area by the familiar scent of fish blood from the nearby cleaning station. This particular shark had been conditioned over several years to associate this area with feeding opportunities. Jennifer's first indication that something was wrong came when she noticed small tropical fish that had been swimming around her suddenly disappeared. The water, which had been alive with colorful marine life moments before, became eerily empty. Confused by the sudden absence of fish but not yet alarmed, Jennifer continued swimming, assuming her movements had simply scared the fish away. She was about 100 yards from shore, in approximately 6 feet of water, when she felt something brush against her leg. The contact was gentle at first, almost like seaweed or debris floating in the current. But when Jennifer looked down, she saw the unmistakable shape of a shark circling below her. Jennifer's panicked movements, thrashing arms, and rapid kicking created exactly the kind of distress prey signals that trigger feeding responses in sharks. The Caribbean reef shark, which had been investigating her presence cautiously, suddenly perceived her as wounded prey and shifted from investigative behavior to predatory action. The attack was swift and decisive. The shark struck Jennifer's leg just below the knee, its teeth designed for gripping and tearing rather than the cutting action of larger species. The bite caused immediate severe damage to her calf muscle, tearing through skin, muscle, and blood vessels. Jennifer's scream of terror and agony carried across the water to the beach, where her friends immediately recognized something was terribly wrong. Sarah, the most water-confident of the group, began swimming toward Jennifer while Michelle and Amanda ran to alert resort lifeguards and beach staff. The shark, having delivered its initial bite, released Jennifer and backed away slightly. Behavior typical of Caribbean reef sharks when they realize their prey isn't what they expected. However, the damage was already done. The bite had severed the posterior tibial artery, creating a wound that was bleeding profusely. Jennifer, despite panic and excruciating pain, managed to begin swimming toward shore. But the blood flowing from her wound was creating a scent trail that continued to stimulate the shark's predatory instincts. The shark, drawn back by blood and Jennifer's continued distressed movements, circled for a second approach. The second bite targeted Jennifer's right ankle and foot, causing additional severe trauma damage and severing more blood vessels. The combined blood loss from both wounds now exceeded 1 liter per minute, rapidly pushing Jennifer toward hypovolemic shock. Sarah reached Jennifer just after the second attack, managing to get her arms around Jennifer and began pulling her toward shore, screaming for help as she struggled against the current and Jennifer's increasingly dead weight. The resort's emergency response was swift and professional. Lifeguards reached the two women within minutes, using a rescue boat to get Jennifer out of the water and onto the beach, where resort medical staff could begin treatment. Jennifer remained conscious during the initial treatment, even managing to speak to her friends and medical personnel working to stabilize her condition. She asked repeatedly about the shark, whether it was still in the water, and whether her friends were safe. Emergency medical services transported Jennifer to Princess Margaret Hospital in Nassau. Surgeons managed to repair the severed arteries and control the bleeding. But complications began developing within hours of surgery. The massive blood loss and trauma had put enormous stress on Jennifer's cardiovascular system. Despite receiving multiple units of blood transfusions, her body began showing signs of multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. Despite the medical team's heroic efforts, Jennifer's condition continued to deteriorate. Jennifer Adams died at 11:23 p.m. on March 19, 2014, approximately 12 hours after the shark attack. On the evening of March 20, 2018, at the coastline of New South Wales, the sun hung low on the horizon, painting the Pacific Ocean in brilliant shades of gold and amber, while gentle offshore winds created perfect conditions. The temperature was comfortable with clear water that revealed the sandy bottom even at considerable depths. It was the kind of evening that made Australia's coastal reputation seem understated. Yet beneath the surface beauty, ancient predators were beginning their evening hunt. Logan Dries lived for the ocean with the fearless enthusiasm that only a 12-year-old could possess. The energetic boy was curious and brave to a fault, with a love for ocean documentaries. His enthusiasm for marine life was genuine, though his understanding was based more on popular media than scientific knowledge. Logan was known for trying to one-up his peers and had a competitive nature that sometimes led him to take risks to prove himself. He was naturally athletic and drawn to adventure, but like many children his age, he didn't fully grasp the complexities of marine ecosystems or predator behavior. On that evening, Logan and two other boys found themselves near the water's edge without direct supervision. The official activities had ended for the day, but Logan had noticed some older teenagers still in the water in an area that was beyond the designated safe zone. What none of them understood was that the diving seabirds they could see in the distance were feeding on massive schools of baitfish, exactly the kind of underwater activity that attracts large predators. The waters off New South Wales were home to some of the ocean's most formidable predators. Great white sharks, the apex predators of Australian coastal waters, grow to lengths exceeding 20 feet and weights of over 5,000 pounds. These ancient hunters possess extraordinary sensory capabilities and can detect blood in extremely diluted concentrations, sense electrical impulses from considerable distances, and identify the bioelectrical signatures of different species with remarkable precision. The challenge began innocently enough, just 3 boys daring each other to swim out a little further than they were supposed to. Logan, determined not to be outdone by his companions, volunteered to go the furthest. The diving seabirds in the distance weren't just a beautiful natural spectacle, they indicated feeding activity that had attracted predators to the area. Great white sharks are perfectly adapted for hunting in Australian waters. Their torpedo-shaped bodies capable of explosive bursts of speed. Their mouths contain up to 300 serrated teeth arranged in multiple rows, with new teeth constantly growing to replace those lost during feeding. These triangular blades can slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Logan's black rash guard created an unfortunate silhouette in the water. From below, the dark clothing against the lighter surface could easily be mistaken for a seal, the preferred prey of great white sharks in Australian waters. The time of day, around 6:10 p.m., coincided with what marine biologists call shark hour, when visibility decreases and predators become more active. Great white sharks typically approach their prey from below and behind, using water conditions and lighting to remain invisible until the moment of attack. Their preferred method involved a single explosive strike from the depths, often launching their massive bodies partially out of the water with the force of the impact. As Logan floated on his stomach, enjoying the gentle swells and feeling proud of his courage in swimming so far from shore, he was completely unaware of the massive predator approaching from below. The juvenile great white shark, approximately 12 feet in length, had been drawn to the area by feeding activity of the bait fish and diving birds. The attack came with explosive force. Logan was struck from directly below, the shark's massive jaws clamping down on his torso. The impact launched him partially out of the water, and his single terrified scream carried across the waves to his horrified companions on shore. The great white's bite was devastating, its teeth penetrating deep into Logan's chest and abdomen. The shark's natural hunting behavior involved a powerful bite followed by a retreat, a strategy that works on seals but proved immediately fatal for the young boy. Logan disappeared beneath the surface as the shark pulled him down, his blood creating a dark cloud in the water. His 2 friends, paralyzed by terror, watched helplessly as the water around Logan's position turned crimson. They screamed for help and ran toward shore, but the beach was operating with reduced coverage due to the late hour. By the time emergency responders reached the scene, there was no sign of Logan, except for the expanding pool of blood on the surface. The search for Logan's body continued through the night and into the following day. Professional divers combed the area where the attack had occurred, while helicopters searched the coastline. Logan's body was finally recovered the next day, about half a mile down the coast, carried by the current. The investigation confirmed that Logan had been killed by a juvenile great white shark, based on the distinctive bite pattern and circumstances. Marine biologists noted that the combination of baitfish activity, the time of day, and Logan's dark wetsuit had created perfect conditions for a case of mistaken identity. The shark had likely identified Logan as a seal and attacked according to its natural hunting instincts. It was March 8, 2015, and the water surrounding Nassau, Bahamas shimmered like polished turquoise beneath the Caribbean sun. Perfect temperatures and crystal visibility created ideal conditions, while gentle trade winds stirred just enough surface movement to keep the water alive and oxygenated. For newlyweds Jessica and David Chen, this represented paradise, the romantic escape they'd envisioned to celebrate their fresh marriage. Jessica Chen brought impressive credentials to their aquatic adventure. A former All-American swimmer at UCLA, she'd channeled her water expertise into marine biology, graduating at 26 with both athletic confidence and scientific knowledge. Her comfort in ocean environments had convinced David to rent a small boat, promising him access to secluded reefs and pristine snorkeling far from crowded resort beaches. David, a San Francisco software engineer, felt less natural on water but trusted his wife's expertise completely. Jessica had crafted their entire itinerary around marine exploration, snorkeling, diving, and reef discovery that showcased the Bahamas' underwater reputation. This was her domain, and David happily followed her lead into deeper adventures. They'd anchored their 22-foot rental vessel near a dramatic drop-off zone, 2 miles from shore where shallow reef plunged into deep blue void. Jessica had researched this transition area extensively, knowing such boundaries often provided spectacular marine life encounters. She hadn't considered that these same zones served as prime hunting corridors for apex predators. Tiger sharks rank among tropical waters' most feared hunters, notorious for aggressive behavior and indiscriminate attacks on virtually anything moving through their territory. These massive predators stretch to 16 feet and exceed 1,400 pounds, marked by distinctive dark stripes across their powerful bodies. Tiger sharks operated as opportunistic feeders with devastating jaw strength. Bite forces surpassing 3,000 pounds per square inch drive teeth designed to slice through turtle shells, bones, and metal debris. Their morning had unfolded perfectly. Jessica and David explored shallow reefs together, discovering colorful fish communities and coral formations that justified the Bahamas' diving reputation. As afternoon progressed, Jessica grew increasingly drawn toward deeper waters beyond the reef edge, hoping to encounter large pelagic species in the blue void. David returned to their boat for lunch and rest, watching from the deck as Jessica continued solo exploration. Her swimming strength and diving experience made him comfortable with her independent ventures, especially in such clear water where he could track her movements 50 yards away. Jessica had been following what appeared to be a large sea turtle, swimming steadily from reef safety into deeper territory. She focused entirely on the dark shape ahead, excited about potential close-up photography of Caribbean marine life. She remained unaware that her pursuit led directly into a 12-foot female tiger shark's hunting grounds. The tiger shark had been patrolling the drop-off zone using deep-water concealment while scanning the reef edge for prey opportunities. These ambush specialists approached from below or alongside, employing excellent camouflage and stealth tactics before launching explosive attacks on unsuspecting victims. Jessica was 100 yards from their boat when the tiger shark struck. The massive predator erupted from the depths with devastating force, jaws spreading wide as she targeted Jessica's midsection. The attack materialized without warning. Jessica transitioned instantly from peaceful surface swimmer to being dragged underwater by 1,400 pounds of predatory power. The tiger shark's jaws clamped around Jessica's waist with crushing pressure, razor teeth slicing through wetsuit material and deep into flesh and bone. Her scream vanished as she disappeared beneath the surface, blood immediately clouding the crystal water around the attack zone. David witnessed his wife's disappearance in a violent explosion of thrashing water and crimson spray. He observed the shark's distinctive stripe pattern as it shook Jessica violently, powerful tail driving both predator and prey toward deeper water. The attack concluded within seconds. Jessica had vanished completely beneath the surface. The tiger shark's bite severed Jessica's spine and crushed multiple ribs, causing massive internal bleeding and trauma. Her resistance weakened as the shark maintained its grip, shaking her body with bone-crushing force before diving toward the bottom with its prey. Jessica's life ended in the deep blue water she cherished, far from boat safety and her desperate husband. David immediately radioed emergency services while starting engines and racing toward the attack site. By the time he reached Jessica's last position, only spreading blood and torn wetsuit fragments remained floating on the surface. Bahama Coast Guard units responded within 30 minutes, launching comprehensive search and rescue operations involving multiple vessels, dive teams, and helicopter support. They scoured the area for hours using sonar equipment and underwater cameras to examine reef systems. The tiger shark had vanished into the vast blue depths, carrying Jessica's body beyond recovery. Search efforts continued for 3 days, covering hundreds of square miles around the attack zone. Dive teams explored every reef cave and crevice while surface vessels dragged nets through deeper waters. Only blood-stained water and diving gear fragments provided evidence of the violent encounter. Bahamian authorities conducted thorough investigations and ruled Jessica's death a tragic accident. No fault was assigned to boat rental operations or location selection. Officials attributed the attack to an unfortunate encounter with a large tiger shark in natural hunting territory during peak feeding periods. David returned to San Francisco alone, devastated by losing his wife days into their honeymoon. Jessica's memorial service occurred at a university marine biology department, attended by hundreds of classmates, teammates, and professors who remembered her ocean conservation passion and fearlessness underwater. The tragedy emphasized the inherent risks of swimming in deep-water predator zones, even for experienced swimmers and divers. Several Bahamian tour operators quietly implemented new safety guidelines, emphasizing boat proximity and avoiding solo swimming in drop-off areas.